about all the secret tech that we're aware of, the SSP has, and the AI too that they have? Is there any way that's going to be merged, with our current civilization?
Absolutely. The question really just remains: how much, how fast, over how long? Those are the devil's in the details in those questions, and I don't think that's above my pay grade to be able to answer that, but definitely we need those technologies. The civilian world needs those technologies. The economy of the world has imbalances in it that if we don't fix when it comes to gas and oil, medical technology, information technology, combat technology. I mean, those are things that if we don't change them, the outcome will suck for everybody, right? We can look at it on paper and go, oh, if we don't change this 5-10 years out, this is really going to be bad. So it's a matter that these things have to happen so that those other disastrous things that we're looking at down the road don't occur. So I would suggest that, free energy technology is going to be one of the first things that comes along. Advanced aeronautical technology is going to be one of the first things that come along. Our advanced body armor, exosuits, plasma rifles, railguns, those are all going to things that are going to come out first. And then we're going to need better medical technology to treat the wounded. And so the old school stuff that we have is not going to work. We're going to need to bring in the new stuff. And those are things that the public might not hear about first. The military may be using it to repair damaged body parts and not tell the civilian world about that right away. It may be after the end of a conflict, and they're like, oh, by the way, the reason we had such low casualty rates is because, every time someone would lose a limb, we could just grow it right back and send them back into the field 3 days later. So, but to simply answer your question, the protocols have been gradual until it's not. So what we're going to see is we're going to continue to see this gradual, progression until we have a major event. Now, when we have a major event, that leaves an opportunity to accelerate that information and go from gradual to big chunk. And
is that event that we are going to cause, or is that a, unplanned event of a visitation?
Generically, that could be any event that brings us to disclosure. But I would suggest that those events are the ones that we're more focused on controlling than could happen randomly. We feel that it's more tactically and strategically sound to control that narrative than to allow it to control itself.
Do you have any specific intel that you could share with us about those programs or about that agenda?
I, again, normally like to avoid timelines, but my brigadier has said that it's okay for me to suggest to people that we should see something significant that we've never seen before on a level that reaches more people than we've ever seen it before in the next 6 to 24 months.
Will it be brought through the media and the government, or is it going to be a worldwide event that you just cannot deny?
It should be a worldwide event that no one can deny.
So anyone with a cell phone could be out there recording this, and we're all going to share it together. And then what's the government's plan right from then? Because now they have to answer. Are they just going to say, well, we've been collecting microscopic organisms in space, so this doesn't surprise us that there's an extraterrestrial here?
Like a lot of ways that the media handles responses to things, there are often stages of responses. So you sometimes can get a first stage response that when the second stage response comes along, it slightly corrects or contradicts the first stage information. So I would suggest that the first story may be like, oh my gosh, we're so surprised. And then the second is, oh, we're now talking to, an Air Force colonel who says, this is what we've been working on. And then, oh, now we're talking to a NASA official who says, this is what we've been working on. And oh, now we got another guy from somewhere else who's telling us this story. So it will be a progressive narrative that will get closer and closer to the truth as they move it along.
And the other big question I have is, how is, the religious part of the planet, the spiritual part of the planet, and the political part of the planet going to handle the day after disclosure?
Yeah, that's part of the question that we're examining for sure.
Who's going to balance all this, mayhem? We're talking about 7.5 billion people almost here on the planet that, they're going to need a lot of tents set up, outside of every city. One, for the religious community saying, why did you lie to me, this entire life? The scientific community is going to have to answer that. And the history of where we came from is going to, they're going to have to answer. There's going to be a lot of people, I believe, that are going to be really confused and maybe not even accept it.
That the initial stage is more of a, it's okay, we're not going to contradict your beliefs, but there's something happening. And that gets people to accept something without feeling like their beliefs are being threatened. If you present it to them in such a way that you're not threatening those beliefs, you're telling them, okay, this is happening, and if you want to believe or define this a certain way, go ahead. That's fine for now. That's phase one. When we get to 2, 3, or 4, those narratives will start to shift. What we see on paper, anyway, is that over time, more and more chunks of these social psychological demographics will just come to a place of acceptance. It looks like somewhere between 14 and 90 days, and you will have about 85% of the population that will come to acceptance, that this is just where we are, this is what's happening. They may complain about it, they may whine about it, they may have all kinds of issues with it, but they'll still be in basic acceptance of it. It's that 15% that is a concern. But we feel that the more you get of that, 85% on board with a narrative, it will force a lot of that 15% to simply adapt or stand against the entire rest of the 85%, which is not going to go well for anybody. And then again, once we're past that 90-day mark, well, then people will just be habituated, right? It won't matter what they believed before that. They'll be habituated to, this is just the way it is.
This is what's happening
This
now.
is the world we live in now. This is, every time I go outside and look up the sky, there's more spaceships. I mean, that's just going to be a thing. And at some point, it normalizes. And so once we get to normalization, most of that 15% will bitch and moan and complain and curse and swear, but they won't do much of anything.
What's the currency issue going to look like then?
It's going to be a little chaotic while we readjust the economic sort of state of the world. And I know some people are not going to like this when I say this, but we're moving towards a single currency. We're moving towards a single economic system. And I will again suggest to people that the most successful civilizations in the galaxy that we know of became successful the minute they decided to unify their currency and unify their global system. Because a planet with 85 little microsystems is way more chaotic and way less productive than a planet with a singular economic system. That singular economic system will actually be good for everybody.
More food, more water, more
everything.
housing, more everything.
More access to resources and the elimination of poverty. And let me point out, the elimination of poverty is one of the most important things that we could do. Because by eliminating poverty, within the first year, crime drops 75%. And within 3 to 5 years, overall crime will drop upwards of 90 or 95%. Because the majority of people who commit petty crimes are doing so because they have economic needs that are not being fulfilled. If people had their economic needs fulfilled, they would not be needing to turn to other petty criminals to engage in petty criminal activity and to engage in that criminal structure. You would simply have more people who would say, you know what? I don't need to do that. I don't need to participate in your scam or your gang activity or your mob activity because I'm actually okay taking care of my wife and kids without it. So the elimination of poverty, the elimination of crime, go hand in hand. And when you are able to do those two things is when the consciousness of an entire planet will shift, because the 90% of suffering happens in poverty. And if we want to eliminate the consciousness of suffering, we have to eliminate poverty. And when we eliminate poverty, we start to eliminate crime, we eliminate the consciousness of suffering, and when those things are no longer part of the equation are when we truly get the opportunity to emotionally, socially, and spiritually evolve.
I agree with that completely, Randy. I see a huge change coming when this comes, and it is going to be a little chaotic at the beginning, but it's going to smooth out.